So I'm going to talk to you about all the permitting world has to offer. All the different acronyms we have, we're going to explain them all today so you understand what they are and how they work. So first off, I want to talk to you about some of the players in the feedlot permit world. These aren't by any means all of them, but these are kind of the three most common ones. You have the MPCA, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, that I work for. We administer the feedlot permit program. Those are construction and operation permits. The need for them varies based on size. We'll go over when you need a permit, when you don't need a permit. We'll go over that later, but that's the kind of permits we have. The counties and townships in Minnesota also have zoning authority over some feedlots, depending on the county and the township you're in. Those are like conditional use permits. Maybe other permits like building permits or a livestock license or a facility license or something like that. That's all local control. That's county control, county and township zoning. Then we also have the DNR, who issues water appropriations permits for feedlots. Those are the three major players. I'm going to focus on the top one. That's the world that I work in, and that's what I'm here today to talk about. So local control, county township zoning. This is CUPs, conditional use permits. The need for these vary widely across the state. Some counties have zoning for feedlots, some counties don't. Some counties zoning starts at 300 animal units. Some start at 1,000 animal units. Some start at 50 animal units. It's all different. Every county is different. Same thing for townships. Every township might be different. Not every township has zoning. Some townships enact zoning for a particular project, spark some township zoning, and the township supervisors enact zoning because some project comes into the area. So start with the county. They're likely to know if the township has zoning. Local control can always be more restrictive than the state. They can have more rules and regulations than the state has. They have to at least adopt our minimum rules. Zoning permits, these CUP permits, building permits, are not feedlot permits. They don't take the place of our permit. So that's a separate process. There's two different processes going on there. They kind of get jumbled together sometimes. County township permits are totally separate from feedlot permits. So the feedlot permit, we have a couple of different types, 4 different permits to be exact. These are the permits required by Minnesota Rule Chapter 7020, which is called the Feedlot Rule. We have some for larger sites, and larger I'm going to use as a kind of a broad term. These are operational permits and construction permits. We have the NPDES, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit, which is a federal permit the state issues on behalf of the federal government. We also have an SDS permit, State Disposal System Permit. That's a state permit, a state level permit issued by the MPCA. Now we have some permits for smaller sites that are really more so for the swine industry, are construction based. There's also one for pollution abatement that's more so for small facilities that have open lots as kind of a common one. Those are interim permits. That's for pollution abatement. So you have some problem you're trying to fix. We'll give you a permit to give you some time to fix that problem. It's a state permit issued by the MPCA, or it can be issued by a county feedlot officer, a delegated person in the county authorized to issue our permits. We also have the construction short form permit, which is just a construction permit. No operational conditions, it's construction. You send us what you want to do, we'll send you a permit to build your particular barn or basin, whatever you're looking to build. So let's talk about the big ones first, the NPDES and SDS permits. Again, that's your federal and state permits. These are the permits for large sites. So who needs one of these permits? Who needs the NPDES permit? You need that permit if you will discharge to waters of the U.S. and the capacity of that facility exceeds 2,500 head of swine weighing 55 pounds or more, or 10,000 swine weighing less than 55 pounds. Now there's thresholds for other animal types too. I'm just going to highlight the swine ones today because we're at the Pork Congress. Makes sense. I'm not going to talk about beef cows today. That's who needs the NPDES permit, the federal permit. So who needs the SDS permit, the state-issued permit? Very similar. They're very similar permits, but one's federal, one's state. You need the SDS permit if you have a capacity for 1,000 or more animal units. And for swine, the animal units are 0.4 if the pig is over 300 pounds. That's your breeding stock, your sows, your boars, those type of animals. 55 to 300 pounds, those are your finishing swine. That's 0.3 animal units. And if it's a nursery pig under 55 pounds, 0.05 animal units. Now, some counties have different animal units than these. Some counties will count all pigs at 0.4. So again, this is the state side. And again, there's different animal units for different animal types. A beef cow is 1, dairy cow is 1.4, so on and so forth. So you're looking at who needs a permit. You add up all those numbers on your site. So if you got a beef site with a swine site or something like that, you add up all those animals together. If that number is over 1,000, you need the SDS permit. Now, if you get the NPDS permit, you don't need to get the SDS permit. It covers you in that case. So this little flow chart, this is actually off one of our fact sheets to kind of help you decide if you need an NPDS or SDS permit. So you kind of start in the left-hand side there. What's your capacity? Does it exceed the large CAFO threshold, which for finishing swine or any swine over 55 pounds is 2,500 head? If you answer yes, you go towards the right and ask, do you discharge to waters of the United States? And I can't think of anybody in Minnesota that does, but if you did, you would have to get the NPDS permit. Otherwise, you kind of go back down the no route and decide if your facility is over 1,000 animal units, then you need the SDS permit. If it's not, you don't need the NPDS or SDS. You might need a CSF, you might need an interim permit, but that's the two big permits we're talking about. What's the difference between the two permits? NPDS permit, the federal permit, is a 5-year permit, a set term. Our current permit term was going to expire in 2021, I believe. So we'll be looking at a new permit then at that point. The SDS permit is a 10-year permit, so a little longer permit coverage. The big difference here is about discharges. The NPDS permit is technically not considered, it's commonly called a zero discharge permit. It's really not zero. It actually authorizes a discharge when precipitation causes an overflow, precipitation discharge. That would be in a 25-year, 24-hour storm, so about 6 inches of rainfall. If you get a big rainstorm, something overflows, you are authorized to discharge. The SDS permit has no such allowance. You cannot discharge at all. 10-inch rainfall, you can't discharge. Doesn't matter. That's the big difference between the two permits. The NPDS permit also provides some assurance that your land application processes and procedures qualify for what's considered the Ag Stormwater Exemption under the federal rule. That means if you apply responsibly at agronomic rates, precipitation causes a discharge, that's not it's an allowed discharge. It's not a violation. The SDS permit does not make that assurance. We're not authorizing discharge with the SDS permit. So there are some advantages to the NPDS permit versus the SDS permit, even though you may not need the NPDS permit. So again, there are some advantages. There's a fact sheet link in the bottom that explains all the different features between the two of those are the three major ones. We have two types of these permits, general permits and individual permits. General permits are the most common. I would venture to say they cover 95% of our sites in Minnesota, general permits. This is what we consider a typical site. So there's eligibility requirements. This permit is a set term. Like I said, ours is going to expire here in 2021. So everyone reapplies for that permit all at once. We get 1,000 applications in the door all at once and process all those applications and get you a permit back. The fees down there, application fee of $620, annual fee $345. Now the other side, the individual permit route, that's issued to sites that are unique. They have some special conditions written for that site specifically. One of the most common ones we do right now is if they have an outdoor feed storage area for a dairy operation, for instance. It's kind of a common thing. They're required to catch that runoff. So we issued a lot of individual permits to allow them time to get those controls in place. So it gives them some time to do it. Each of those permits has a different term. So you get a full 5 years from the date you apply for that permit to have that permit, or a full 10-year term. So that when everyone reapplies at a different time. The fees there are a little more because we're writing a unique permit for each site rather than general permit, so the fees are a little bit more than that. And it's not a penalty. There's nothing wrong with it. Just two different types of permits for two different situations. That's the big, large permits. Let's talk about interim and CSF permits. So these are for the sites that do not need the NPDS or SDS permit. So who might need an interim permit? For the swine industry, there's not a lot of cases I could think of. Usually it revolves around open lot runoff issues, a beef lot next to a stream or an intake that needs to control the runoff because they're having too much pollution to waters. Sometimes it's related to manure storage structure issues. So you've got a pump out separating away from your pit. I've seen that happen when manure starts leaking out the side. You may do an interim permit to help you fix that joint up. Or if you have manure management issues, you just, for some reason, you just can't apply to economic rates. Don't know why, but you just can't. You keep over applying. Or you have extremely high soil phosphorus values. Would be another reason to get an interim permit. The CSF permit, the construction permit only. This is needed when you construct or expand an animal holding area, manure storage area, that results in the capacity being 300 or more animal units. So 300 animal units of swine is 1,000 head of finishers, 600 head of nursery, or 750 head of breeding stock. So anytime you're building a site or adding to a site in those numbers, you need to get that permit. It's just construction only. What are the difference between those two permits? They're both 2-year permits, so they just go away after 2 years. They just expire. The interim has conditions for pollution abatement. It tells you to do X, Y, and Z. You got to build this. You got to do this in the interim. It gives you 2 years to do it. If the work is done in 2 years, permit goes away. You don't need a permit anymore. The CSF is a construction-only permit, so it authorizes you to construct your new barn or your new storage area. And again, if the work is done in 2 years, permit goes away. You're just there. No operating permit needed. So none of these are operational permits like the NPDES or SDS permit where you're reapplying every 5 years or 10 years. These are one-time permits and get the job done, they go away. So there's 4 types of permits. I went through that pretty fast. So you may not know what permits you need. We actually on our website have this handy page called What Feedlot Permit Do I Need? So you kind of start at the top. If you discharge the waters of the U.S. and exceed the federal large CAFO thresholds, which are for swine, are labeled right there, if you answer yes to that question, you need the NPDES permit. If you answer no, you go to question 2. Do you have a capacity for 1,000 or more animal units? If yes, you need the SDS permit. If you don't, go to question number 3. Have you been identified as a pollution hazard? Do you have some problem at your site you're trying to fix? If yes, you need the interim permit. If no, you go to question 4. Are you doing construction and expansion at a site with 300 or more animal units? If yes, you need the CSF permit. If no, you don't need a permit. You just have to notify us that you're doing some work at your feedlot. So this is a page on our internet site. Yes?
What if this year your expansion is less than 300 animal units, but this year, let's say 2019, is 100 animal units. Next year, 2020, is 200 animal units for a cumulative 300 animal units.
Yeah, so that 300 is cumulative. So if you're...
How many years is it cumulative?
It's forever. It's under facility capacity. So if you are an existing site with 200 and you want to add 200 10 years from now, that's 400 total. You get that permit 10 years from now. It's a cumulative number. If you're an existing site, when might you need a permit? Any site over 300 animal units or that's going to be expanding to 300 animal units needs a permit if it's adding an animal holding area, increasing animal numbers or units, even if you're not building anything, you're just putting more animals in a barn, or adding a manure storage area. That's when an existing site might need a permit. Those 3 big items. If you happen to have an NPDES or SDS permit, you may need a permit to do any of those things above, obviously, or adding a feed storage area. So a lot of these are for dairies, for silage piles outside. They're exposed to the rainfall. If you're substantially changing a manure management plan, so you're adding a field, doing some major modification to your plan for manure management, you need to get a permit modification for that. Or you're changing the operation somehow that affects emissions. So let's say you have been operating with a cover on an outdoor manure storage basin and you want to take the cover off. That would be a change that would alter the emissions. You need a modification for that. So all these permits we talked about are all based on facility capacity. And that means the most that can ever be held in that barn. Even if you don't intend to stock at that level, even if you're going to have some mortality loss, it's how many pigs can be in that barn. How do we do that? Well, there is no rule, law that says you need this many square feet per pig. So we use industry standards. What we've seen for typical barn designs, typical stocking densities, numbers from Midwest Plan Service and other sources. So for finishers, we look about 8 square foot per head on a barn size. That's how much space a finisher pig needs. Nursery pigs, 4 square feet per head. Those two are pretty straightforward and pretty universal. Breeding stock is not so straightforward. They were looking at counting stalls or crates. Or if you have a pen or a room, we're looking at how many rooms and how much square foot per pig you get in each room. And it's really kind of a case-by-case approach with those kind of situations. We'll ask for a floor plan, for instance. We do that routinely to count the number of stalls and crates. You really cannot have open crates or stalls or pens or rooms. That's capacity. Those could be pigs in those stalls or crates. There are some special situations that can be accommodated. That's kind of a case-by-case thing. If you have some special situation why you need more space for your pigs. One I could think of is, I think we have one site that raises pigs for medical research purposes and wants more space for pigs. That's a little different than just raising pigs for market. So they are allowed a little more space. We have some pigs that are at like 9 square foot per head for some other reasons. So it's not that it's hard and fast. It's a starting point for a discussion. And why are you different? Why do you need more space for your pigs? If it comes in around 8 square foot per head, we're not going to question it at all. So that kind of makes sense. It's quick on who needs a permit, but I could talk all day on who needs a permit. So very quick. There's more information on our website. Let's talk about once you apply for a permit, what happens to that application. Before you even apply, there's some things you should do or may want to consider. Here's a to-do list for you. Develop a manure management plan right away. Obtain plans and specs for any liquid storage you're doing out there from an engineer. Perform what's called the Good Neighbor Notice. We'll go over each one of these in a little more detail. Develop a stormwater pollution prevention plan. You might need to do that. Develop an emergency response plan for if you have a spill or anything like that. And other good ideas are talk to your neighbors, talk to the neighborhood, let them know what's going on. Nobody likes to be blindsided with a proposal they have no idea about. They don't want to hear about it in the newspaper at the coffee shop. They want to hear about it from you directly. And talk to the local, talk to the county, talk to the township. Let them know what's going on. Don't surprise them with a big proposal coming in. So MMP, Manure Management Plan, is required whenever you apply for a permit. Once you have to have one, you're required to keep it up to date. I have a tool on our website. It's an Excel-based program. It's totally free. You can download it. You can make your own plan. You can hire somebody to do your plan. You can do it however you want, but create a manure management plan. There's a link to it in the bottom down there. The nice thing about our planner, it'll meet all our rule requirements. It's set up for that, and it will keep records for you. And I think it's the best tool ever, so I'm partial to it. It's free. That's the big thing. It's free. It doesn't cost you a dime. Plans and specifications are required for all liquid manure storage areas. They have to be designed by a professional engineer. There's one exception there. I'm not going to cover that. It doesn't really apply to swine sites that much. You need to have some soil borings done, looking at, is there water table concerns here? Do we need a perimeter tile around our pit? Do we have separation of bedrock? There are rules on separation of bedrock, especially in the southeast part of the state. And you may have to do what's called a karst feature survey, looking for sinkholes or potential sinkholes in the area. Again, down in the southeast. One thing to note, if you're planning to have an open-air liquid swine basin in Minnesota, you're out of luck. You can't do it. It has to have a cover on it. You just can't do it. A barn counts as a cover. Barn's a cover. The Good Neighbor Notice. This is something that you have to do as a project proposer. It's required when you construct a new facility of 500 or more animal units, or propose an expansion of a facility to 500 or more animal units. What that does is inform residents and landowners within 5,000 feet of your facility that something's going on. Typically you do that in a newspaper. It can be done by letter. And the kicker is here that we as an agency or as a county cannot issue you a permit for 20 business days until that notice has been in the paper. We have to wait 20 business days to issue you a permit. So this is done by you. Typically in a newspaper, it can be done by letter in person as well, but that's the good neighbor notice. Again, I hope you've talked to your neighbors before it appears in the paper. Let them know what's coming. Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. What's that? That's kind of not a new thing, but relatively new to the livestock world. It's a plan to limit sediment from leaving the site during construction. So if you've been in a city lately and you've seen silt fence around a new development, you will have to do that around your construction of your feedlot site if you disturb 1 acre or more. Now this includes your barns, your pits, your driveways, anything that you're disturbing on that site. If it's an acre or more, you'll have to develop a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And if you create 1 acre of impervious surface, so you have 1 acre of roof, or 1 acre of roof and driveway combined, a driveway is impervious, you may need a stormwater infiltration area for that water. So it has to infiltrate into the surface before it can be discharged to a road ditch, drainage ditch, wherever it ends up going to. Now we have a form for this. There's a link in the bottom where that form actually exists, and a fact sheet about this whole stormwater pollution prevention plan. It's a relatively new topic in the feedlot world. It's been around for a while, but really kind of relatively new when we talk about bigger sites being built. We also have an emergency response plan requirement, required for all NPDS and SDS permits, but it's really a good idea for any size site. We have a 1-page form. It's very simple to complete. It's just a list of key phone numbers, sheriff, duty officer, manure pumper in case you have a spill. Right at your facility, easy to get to, and is right there for you to look at in the event of a spill. We have a form for it, link in the bottom down there. You want to look for that as well. So a complete application always requires the application form, obviously signed, completed, and an aerial photograph or sketch with the components of your site. We also need a manure management plan always, whenever you're applying for a permit. If you're building a liquid storage area, you need plans and specifications from an engineer. If you're applying for an NPDS or SDS permit, you need the application fee and emergency response plan. And if you're one of those facilities that are over 500 animal units, you have to have proof of your good neighbor notice. And if you're disturbing 1 acre or more, you have to have your stormwater pollution prevention plan developed, but you don't get to send it to us unless you're disturbing 50 acres. So that's a big site. But you have to have one on file. You don't get to send it to us to review. Send the application for NPDS and SDS permits to the MPCA. We'd like to get them by email. So scan an email to feedlotsubmittal.pca@state.mn.us. You can also mail them, but we'd like to get them by email. It's easier for us to deal with. If you happen to be in a delegated county, the county is delegated to run the program, you can submit the CSF and interim permits, those for your smaller sites, directly to the county feedlot officer, and they'll take care of them from there. Now, if you are a large CAFO and you want to apply for a CSF permit, you don't want to get the NPDS permit, you're not over 1,000 animal units, so let's say you have 3,000 head of swine, 900 animal units, you can get a CSF permit for that. That will come from the state. If you go to the county, they'll send it to the state because you crossed that large CAFO threshold. We have to permit you as a state. Okay, once the application comes in the door, what happens to it? We review it. Is everything there? Is it complete? Are all the components there? Is the application form completed correctly? Are the location restrictions applicable? Can you build where you want to build? Are you in a shoreline? Are you in floodplain where you can't build what you want to build? What's your facility capacity like? Is it reasonable? Is it around that 8 square foot per head for finishers? Do you have an adequate good neighbor notice? Did you do your good neighbor notice yet? And do you have plans and specifications in there? Is everything in that packet that needs to be in there? If it is, and everything's reviewed and it's okay and everything looks good, we can get you a permit. If you applied for a CSF and interim permit, the permit's issued as soon as we approve that application packet. As soon as we got everything we need, the permit's issued and out the door to you. Provided your 20 business days have passed since your good neighbor notice. We have to wait that long, but that's pretty quick. It can happen really quickly once the application is complete. The NPDS and SDS permit's a little more lengthy, a little more time. Not a lot, but a little bit. So once we reviewed it, determine that everything's there, it's complete, looks good, you have to put your permit on public notice. So it goes on our website for 30 days, and we take public comments on it. So this notice, this SDS and NPDES public notice, is not the same as the good neighbor notice. It's something totally different. You do the good neighbor notice, we do the permit notice. The notice is 30 days, like I said, on our website. We take written comments. There's also an option for the public to request a public information meeting. And it's just an informal meeting, something like this, where you get up and talk about the site, the project, the permit. It's not automatically granted. They ask for it, we may not grant it. It's up to our discretion. There's also a contested case hearing, which is a more formal process before an administrative law judge, and that's to resolve disputed facts. And Steve and I were just talking before, and I can't recall us having a contested case hearing for a feedlot in my 16 years I've been here. I can't recall having one in a permit-related matter. So we don't grant them very often. And again, it's only to resolve disputed facts. It's not about should this site be built here or not. It's just there's something factually incorrect about the application we need to know about. A lot of times we work together with that. If somebody brings up a point that's in dispute, we'll work it out before we even get to this part. We'll make sure we understand what's going on way ahead of time.
George,
Yes.
what's your guidance or internal guidance for how you decide what to vote?
I don't know. We have really good internal guidance for that. You aware of any, Steve, that
We don't at this time.
I don't think we have a formal process or we don't get a lot of requests for public information meetings. We don't get a ton of them. If it's,
We have held
We've-
two more in recent history, but that's primarily just on sites where we've known there was going to be a large outcry from the public. And so we actually asked the producer to go ahead and hold that public meeting during
the comment period.
comment period so that we don't get into the situation of holding an informational meeting and people from the public wanting to attend and wanting to comment outside the comment period. So the last 2 or 3 permits that we've worked on, we've asked the producers to actually, if they would be willing to hold an informational meeting.
Once the comment period's over, the comment time is done. So if the meeting happens afterwards, it's just for information. There's no chance for anybody to submit additional comments or take back some comments they were going to submit if they had known more information about it. So we encourage them to kind of do it up front. If you think it might be happening, do it right away so we can get this process, keep the process going instead of delay it longer. There's no formal rule to follow when you grant one. There is one for contested case hearings. There's a rule we follow. Make sure we follow that rule to grant those hearings or deny those hearings. There's nothing like that for public information meeting. It's just kind of up to the discretion of the commissioner.
Same thing goes then for extending comment periods.
Yes. Discretion of the commissioner.
Discretion, it says
May extend.
may extend the discretion of the commissioner.
Once that public notice process is complete, if we get comments, we are required to respond to those comments. If they ask for an informational meeting, we decide if one should be held. Or they ask for a contested case hearing, we decide if one should be held. Now, depending on the number of comments or requests, that all takes time to complete. If we get one comment, it's pretty quick to respond to. If we get 300 comments, it's going to take us a while to respond to all those comments. So length of time varies widely. If there's no public participation, no comments, no hearing requests, permits go out the door relatively quickly after that comment period is up. I think kind of on average from when we say it's complete and put it on notice, the permit gets issued in about 45 to 60 days usually. So it's not a long process, but if comments are received, it can get drawn out when we respond to those comments. Yes?
What are some typical comments that you have to respond to?
Typical comments we get, first of all, we're going to respond to comments that are water quality based or air quality based. Those comments we don't have any authority over, we're not going to respond to, like, I don't like big egg. We don't respond to those comments. That's not something we have authority over. Lately, we've been getting a lot of comments on land application practices and nitrates in groundwater, runoff concerns, air quality concerns are always a comment. Those type of comments we get. Yeah, air and water quality. Water quantity we get questioned on as well. We don't regulate that. That's regulated by the DNR. So that's a different permit process. That's separate. It's confusing that that's a separate process. So again, we don't respond to those comments. And water quantity. Water quality, we do.
Do you respond in a way that just say that we're not the regulatory agency that handles this?
Yes. Yeah, if we write a written record and say, this is not handled by us, we don't have authority over this, the county has authority over this, or DNR has authority over this, or there is no authority over this sometimes.
I don't like it.
We get a lot of those comments, yes. Because my grandpa didn't get the land he was supposed to get. Yes, we get those comments too. So getting a permit is that simple. Straightforward. Everybody's got it. We're all pros. It's really not quite that simple yet. There's more to go. Local control, like I talked about before, could prohibit the project. You can get a feedlot permit from the state. You can get the NPDS permit, the SDS permit, any permit you want from us. If you can't get your local permit, you can't do the project. There's two separate processes, two different permits there. We also have environmental review. This is a process that has to be completed before any government approval can be given. This is even before we can issue you a permit. You got to do this environmental review process. A lot of times it's done concurrently at the same time, so it kind of blends together. That's just for ease of comments and thinking about the project altogether. But now we're going to talk about environmental review, which is outside of permitting, but related. So Chuck is here to talk about that.
George, at the end, we come back to,
Yep, I'll answer a question at the end. I'll be around.
well, what do you think from the group of what happens after you've done the construction? What steps do you do?
I do not have a slide for that, but I can tell you about that, yes.
Okay, so why do we do environmental review? Purpose of environmental review is to take a comprehensive look at the issues and take a look at the potential environmental impacts of a project, including air impacts, air quality impacts, groundwater, surface water, traffic impacts. An environmental review looks for ways to improve project design and mitigate impacts before they happen. There's a few differences between environmental review and permitting. In environmental review, again, it's a broad look at the project. We look at everything, all media, and we also look at cumulative impacts. Environmental review can take a look at project alternatives, phased actions, and mitigation. It's important to know that environmental review is not an approval process, and it does guarantee public input into the process. When is an EAW mandatory? For new feedlots, if you're over 1,000 animal units, you're going to have to do an EAW. If you're expanding feedlot, if your expansion is more than 1,000 animal units, you'll have to do an EAW. Yes?
I have a follow-up question to my question earlier. At what point is the expansion cumulative, or over how many years is that cumulative number, or is there a drop-in number?
Okay, what you're talking about is what's called a phased action. A phased action is when you build it in two different phases. You put up one barn this year, put up another barn next year. There's what's called a 3-year look-back rule. So it's from 3 years of when you started construction of the first barn until you apply or submit the permit application for the second barn. So it's that 3-year period. And if it's more than 1,000 animal units in that 3-year period, then you have to do an EAW. If you're in a sensitive area, the threshold drops to 500 animal units. And a quick reading on the sensitive areas are shoreland, delineated floodplains, state or federally designated wild and scenic river district, areas within a drinking water supply management area, and where the aquifer is identified as vulnerable to contamination, or within 1,000 feet of a known karst area. You can also be petitioned for an EAW, for a discretionary EAW. Discretionary EAWs are those EAWs which fall between the mandatory thresholds and the exempt thresholds. Petitions are submitted to the RGU, and the RGU has to determine, may there be the potential for significant environmental effects. It's actually a fairly low threshold for making that determination. So who is exempt? If you're a new feedlot, anything less than 300 animal units is exempt from environmental review. If you're 300 to 999 animal units, you're conditionally exempt. The conditional exemption has three things. One, that you sign a document that says that you're going to comply with all the rules and regulations of the state, which you do when you submit the permit application. You sign it, you've already done that. Second one is, well, for new, it really doesn't apply. It's got to be under 1,000 animal units total. And third is you have to have a meeting at the local unit of government. A conditional use permit hearing qualifies, and you are exempt. Or if there's not a conditional use permit process, a lot of times they'll have a meeting at the township level, and that qualifies you for that exemption. Expanded feedlots, only less than 100 animal units is exempt, or from 100 to 999, it's conditionally exempt unless the cumulative of the site goes over 1,000 animal units, then you're not exempt. Sensitive areas, less than 50 animal units is exempt from environmental review. 50 to 499 animal units is not exempt and can be petitioned for an EAW. I'm going to try to break the process up into 4 areas here: before the comment period, during the comment period, and after the comment period, and then also talk about the EIS decision criteria. Before the comment period, and this is actually the longest part of the EAW process. The first thing you want to do is get a hold of somebody that's qualified to do air dispersion modeling, have them submit an air dispersion modeling protocol. That comes to me, I review that, approve it, then they go ahead and do the air modeling. Then you're going to submit at the same time, some of the things you also want to be working on is your DNR, NHIS, Natural Heritage Information System database search. You want to get that done because that can take a while. You want to go to the State Historical Preservation Office and do their database search. They've been through some changes lately, so that might take a little bit of time to get that done. You do need to include your manure spreading acres. You also need to do a DNR preliminary well assessment if you are going to be doing a new well. If you're not going to be drilling a new well, you still need to get a hold of the DNR area hydrologist and have them do that preliminary assessment. We do this to comply with the state statute that says that if you're doing an EAW and you might need to get a DNR water appropriations permit, there has to be an assessment of the available water resources, and this is what we do to comply with that state statute. And again, you have to have a map of your proposed manure application acres. We understand that it's probably not going to stay that way. It's probably only good for maybe 1 year. We get that, but we at least have to do that to demonstrate that there are enough available acres out there. Once we get all of the data submittal, we review it for completeness. We also, at that time, we coordinate with the MPCA permitting staff very closely. We want to make sure that it is a permittable feedlot, that the application is complete. You've done all those things that George says you need to do. We also like to make sure that the EAW, the information in the EAW is consistent with the permit application. A lot of times there can be a time lag between when they start doing the EAW to when the permit application gets filled out, and producers change their mind, they change the dimensions of the barns, and sometimes we don't catch that, and that looks bad in the public eye. They then say, you guys don't know what you're doing, and we like to make sure that that doesn't happen. Can also be a problem with air modeling because that gets done way ahead of time, so sometimes the barn's dimensions can be different than that, and we have to make sure that that is consistent both in the permit application and the EAW. We also like to check with the county and local officials to make sure that the project is consistent with the local regulations, or if they're not consistent with the local regulations, that gets called out in the EAW. We also like to coordinate with the DNR, especially lately on the water appropriation stuff. It doesn't affect the swine industry as much, but the dairy industry, with the size of the operations that they're putting up out west, getting enough water to water those cows can be a real issue and has become a real issue. During the comment period, typically it lasts for 30 days. Typically. We have to publish the notice of availability in the EQB monitor. Basically, it says, hey, the CAW is open for comment. It's available for comment. We are required to send out a press release. We are not required to make them publish it, but we do send it out through a gov delivery that goes to every media outlet in the state, and it's up to them whether or not they want to publish it. We also mail or email that notice of availability to any interested party. So a lot of times people see that good neighbor notice, they may get a hold of us and say, I want to be on your mailing list, and they want to get everything. We have to mail it to them. There's also, EQB has a mandatory mailing list that we also have to mail it to. And we also place the full EAW on our webpage and make that link available to anybody who would like to have that. After the comment period, we're required to respond to all substantive comments. The thing of it is basically that means we got to respond to everything. We either have to say it's not substantive or we have to respond to it. Sometimes we don't have all the information we need, or that we have identified during that comment period that something is missing. And at this time, then we can request that additional information. If we can't get that additional information, then we have to order an EIS. So we can't have any blank gaps in that information. Following all of that, we prepare what's called the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and an order on the need for an EIS. Most commonly is a negative declaration saying we don't need to do an EIS. Our EAWs have become comprehensive enough that oftentimes we've already answered most of the questions that would have been answered by an EIS. If you get the negative declaration, environmental review is done, and they can go ahead and issue the permit right then, provided they've done their good neighbor notice. Positive declaration for an EIS does not happen very often, but it has happened on occasions. Proposers have three options. You can go ahead and proceed with the EIS, you can withdraw the project, or you can relocate or modify the project and then redo the EAW. And would like to point out that any decision that we make is appealable, and it has to be done within 30 days of the that declaration or the order, and it has to be done in the district court of the county where that project would be undertaken. EIS decision criteria. The main standard is, does the project have the potential for significant environmental effects? That's the key question that we have to answer. If the answer is yes, then we need to do an EIS. If the answer is no, then we don't do an EIS. Things that we are required by rule to take into consideration is the type, the extent, and the reversibility of the effect. Commonly the way we answer that is, if the project goes away or ceases to exist, will any effects disappear? And if the answer is yes, that's what we consider a reversible effect. Potential cumulative effects. What else is going on around there? How many other feedlots are in the area? What else might be using any large draws of groundwater in the area? How many public drinking water wells are in the area? We have to look at all of that. Extent effects are subject to mitigation by ongoing regulatory authority. Is it something that's going to be covered by the permit? Is it something that can be covered by the permit? Is it something that's going to be covered by a DNR permit? Is it something that's going to be covered by a local land use permit? If it's going to be regulated by that, then we can take that into consideration and say, no, that's not a significant effect. The extent that environmental effects can be anticipated and controlled as a result of other available environmental studies. So in other words, if it's an issue that's already been looked at in another EAW, we can rely on the information from that other EAW to make our decision and say, we've already looked at this, we don't need to look at it again. Benefits of environmental review. One of the big benefits of environmental review is air quality. We look at hydrogen sulfide emissions, we look at ammonia emissions, we look at odor emissions. If you're not going through environmental review, this doesn't happen. When we model for hydrogen sulfide emissions, there are two things that we're looking at. One, will it comply with the ambient air quality standard, which is at the property line. We also look at the subchronic hydrogen sulfide inhalation health risk value. It's a 13-week average value. I haven't seen one yet where that's been an issue. Usually if there's an issue, it's with that ambient air quality standard. For ammonia, there is a 1-hour standard inhalation health risk value standard, and then there's an annual standard. I've not yet seen an issue with the annual average standard, but occasionally we have seen some issues with that 1-hour standard. And if we're seeing violations of that, then we want to take a look at, okay, where are those violations and how frequent are those violations? If that's somebody's residence, we're probably going to suggest that you maybe do something different. If it's on the road and it's only 5 times in the 5-year modeling run, we're probably going to say, what are the odds that somebody's going to be there at that exact time, and say, the risk is still pretty low. Those are not actual enforceable standards. They're just guidelines for health risk. And then we also model odor because that's actually what people want to know. We don't have any regulatory authority on odor, but we model it because, like I said, people want to know it. Sometimes the counties like to know what that information is going to be. Is this going to smell? Is it going to smell at my church? That's usually the big question is am I going to have to close the windows on church on Sunday on a hot July afternoon? And it's not a guarantee, but we can at least give them an idea, yes or no, it's going to smell. Oftentimes, EAWs have in the past resulted in siting and design improvements to deal with possible flooding conditions, stormwater runoff issues, or sometimes even karst issues. Large feedlot projects generate large quantities of manure. EAWs evaluate the plans for managing the manure on site and the plans for land application or other management of manure, evaluating the location of nearby public and private drinking water wells, groundwater and soil conditions, and other area conditions that help assure the project will not have a harmful effect on nearby surface or groundwater, as well as high resource areas in the vicinity, such as a trout stream, state park, something like that. EAWs assess critically important question of water availability. EAWs will determine early in the process whether there is enough water to provide for the number of animals in the proposed project area. I forgot to do that, sorry. And whether the water needs of the project may affect other wells or resource needs in the area. We need to identify potential water supply issues as early as possible. And we do coordinate quite closely with the DNR on this. If they have concerns, we have concerns. We don't want to be saying, hey, yeah, go ahead and put 10,000 head of cows out there and there's only enough water for 5,000. And yes, that has happened, and that elongated that EAW process as we went through that, being able to guarantee, yes, there's going to be enough water in that area. Again, environmental review, it coordinates across the MPCA programs internally. We coordinate with the feedlot program when we're doing it. We coordinate with the also coordinate with the TMDL or watershed program. We also promote external cooperation. We coordinate with the DNR. We coordinate with the counties and the feedlot officers. Some of our main partners are the Department of Natural Resources, the Minnesota Department of Ag, and the Minnesota Department of Health. EAWs facilitate project location, design, construction, operations, and emergency response improvements. Oftentimes when we're going through the environmental review process, we'll potentially see some things to help improve the emergency response plans, just so that we can have a better emergency response plan. And again, probably one of the biggest things is that it does require an analysis of the cumulative impacts. And again, that just takes into account anything and everything that's going on in that area, including existing projects and other projects which we know may happen in that area. So if you know that your neighbor down the road might be putting up a feedlot, you need to take that into consideration. And that is my presentation. You want to come back up, George, and answer
Sure.
some questions?
Yeah, I can. This is a time where we want you guys to ask questions of us. We gave you a lot of information in a short amount of time. So if you have questions on the process, we can answer those, or questions about when it's required. I can address Adam's question of what happens after you get your permit and you're all done. So you get a permit, you build your site, you're all done. You send us a report from the engineer saying, I built the structure according to what I said I was going to build it. You send it in to us. If you don't have the NPDES or SDS permit, you may not hear from us again for quite a while. If you have the NPDES or SDS permit, there's an annual report requirement that's with that permit. So every year you're going to send us a report. I had 3,000 pigs in my barn. I generated this much manure. I had a spill, and here's what I did, or I didn't have a spill, those type of things. You're going to report to us every year on what you did. And expect an inspection every 5 years for general permits. Typically, it's kind of the average. And if individual permits get inspected every single year. So that's what happens afterwards. So if you're not an NPDES or SDS permit site, you don't have any operational conditions. You just follow the feedlot rule that everybody else follows. Permits law. That's what you're looking for? Okay. Any other questions? Compliments?
After this construction permit,
Yes.
you have 2 years to start the project, 2 years to complete it.
So the permit is for a term of 2 years. So when we issue that permit, it's going to have 2-year expiration on it. So it's time to get your project done in 2 years. You can ask for an extension for another 2 years. So before it expires, you can say, I didn't get the work done. I'm still going to build it according to these plans. And it'll give you 2 more years to do it. So you can get up to 4 years on the construction permit. And then if you don't get it done, you can apply again for a permit. You just got to apply again, do your good neighbor notice again. All that stuff has to be done again. So you can still apply again. It's not a one-time bite at the apple. You get multiple chances.
What's the current time lapse between, say, filing from the county into the MPCA for the permit granting? Looking at how many months?
From when you apply to when you get your permit?
Yeah.
So if it's a construction permit or an interim permit, one of those smaller site permits, if you send us an application, you have your application completed. It's really when the application is complete, when we got all the stuff we need. That permit goes to the door within a few days sometimes. Yeah, it can be really quick. It can be really quick. Depending on how complete your application is, did you do your notice in time? Are we waiting 20 business days for that to expire? If you're doing a large permit, NPDES or SDS permit, once it's complete, we put it on notice for 30 days. If we don't get any comments or nothing else, you can expect your permit, once it's on notice, to get back to you in about 45 to 60 days. If we get comments, then it's how many comments do we get, and all that stuff has to happen. Yes?
Kate Eink, MSA Professional Services, and previously working government regulation and at the county level. And I feel like one of the most common misconceptions is the MPCA's obligation to coordinate permitting with the county and township level of government. And I feel like when everybody's asking about how much time and when your permit is done, et cetera, and I think there's a really common misconception is that once you're done, you guys, because you're kind of the big boys in the room, you're done. And that you guys are coordinating, MPCA is coordinating with local government to make sure that those applications are matching up and that everything is copacetic.
Yeah, that's a common complaint. Our permit is different than the county process.
How do we do better? As farmers, as engineers, as government, regulators. What can we do to make this process more transparent?
But when the environmental review process is involved, then it's more coordination between the county, the state, and all the parties involved, because no government approvals can happen until that process is done. So in those cases, it's kind of coordinated. The other cases, I don't know that there's a good way to coordinate all that.
I think the best thing to tell your client or the producers here in the room is that if you're submitting, you need to submit an application to the Pollution Control Agency or to the county feedlot officer in a certain situation. You should also be talking with your local unit of government, whether that's the township or the county at the same time to find out what their process is. Because at the state level, we just cannot keep track of every single, there's 87 counties in the state.
All different ordinances.
Each one has a different ordinance. We can't keep track of every single county ordinance. And couple that with all the townships that have local zoning, again, that adds another layer of complexity. So you need to be talking with your local units of government as well as talking with the state on the permit.
I have one more tangential
Sure.
comment on that with regards to the EAW. And I think another common misconception is that you could get all the way through an EAW process and come to a negative determination saying there's not significant environmental impact, but still have a project that on the local government side is not a permissible project.
Yes, that does happen.
Yeah,
Yes.
So it's almost like insult to injury there. You've gone through this process and determined that
Yeah.
looks like a good project. However,
Because the local control said no, then the project doesn't happen. So it's always down to that lowest level. And it could be the township could say no.
If an application or an EAW comes into the state, we're obligated to act on that according to our rules and regulations, not according to what the local rules and regulations are.
and so I guess when I from stepping back from a previously permitting regulatory path, when I hear questions like how long do we have to complete the project, and I hear these very unequivocal answers from MPCA, my next gut check is to say check with your local regulatory agency because they might have something
Totally
different. Where they might say, oh, this requires a different permitting process, and we have a timeline that's, 60 days to respond to your request, but then you have 1 year, perhaps, to build, or 1 year to get started, and what does get started mean, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, insult to injury.
I think this is redundant, but to make sure I understand it right. The good neighbor policy or notification is clearly required, but the completion of either the county or a township, that portion of the permitting is not required to use the page.
So for the good neighbor notice, a conditional use permit hearing, so they notice that in the paper, that can count as your good neighbor notice, provided it's got all the correct information and all that kind of stuff is in there. That can count. But it doesn't satisfy any local ordinance. That's separate. That's totally separate from what I was talking about today. That's over that way. Nope. We have quite a few instances where we issue a permit to a feedlot that cannot get the local permit to build. And they may want to get that permit to have it in hand so that should the county board makeup change or the ordinance change, they can get a variance. They have our permit in hand and they're ready to go.
You don't have any neighbors within 5,000 feet? You need a good neighbor?
It is it's landowners and residents. So you're going to have landowners, unless you own all the land in 5,000 feet, then you would not have to notify yourself. So that would be a rare case, but
But if you do
possible.
that, you don't have to.
It's possible, yeah. We'd have to, I want to know that you own all that land within 5,000 feet, yeah.
During the process, when you get the complete application, will the property be determined as complete, you notify the applicant that yes, it is complete?
Yes.
And then from the standpoint of communication, after you made that determination, what can be reasonably expected where if I want to call you and check on my status number?
Okay.
What can be reasonably expected for, I don't want to cost a lot like that.
Yeah.
Interrupting or making.
Sure, yeah.
And the other hand, just make sure we're hitting milestones.
Yeah.
Trying to do something. So if you had advice for a proposal, how often would you be okay if a proposer calling you to say, where's my permit?
Okay. So I'm going to address that on,
Nice way.
yeah. So I'm going to address that on the NPDS and SDS permits specifically, because the CSF permits are relatively quick. Once we determine it's complete, we may not even send you a letter, we may just send you the permit. So the NPDS and SDS process, typically we're notifying you it's complete and putting on notice at the same time. So it'll go on the website. So then the next 30 days is running. That 30 days comment period is up and running at the same time we tell you it's complete. Most comments are going to come in on the 29th day. So up until that point, I really can't tell you much. You can call 2 weeks into the process, have you got any comments? And then maybe the 3rd week or the 4th week. Once a week would be plenty of calling. Plenty of calling to check on it.
There's not probably any updates until that 29th.
29th day at 4:30. Yeah. That's when most of the comments come in. They just do. They wait till the last minute. So then we'll know the next day, maybe the next 2 days, because maybe they came in the mail. So we're going to wait a couple days because they're supposed to be received, but if they come in the mail, they're postmarked. We kind of respond to those comments because they put it in the mailbox and got it to us. So that will govern a little bit, but if there's no comments, the permit gets issued pretty quickly after that. So then there's not a lot of comments or a lot of time to respond to it.
Once a permit comes off of public comment, if there are no comments or very few comments, those permits are probably issued and out the door within 5 days.
Yeah.
Of coming off of public comment. Normally.
When you're working on an EAW, I'm going to break it into parts. Prior to the EAW going out on notice, call us as often as you need to get that thing moving. A lot of times we're waiting for information, additional information from a consultant that we don't have or we need before we can move forward. And a lot of times it's the proposer that can get the consultant moving quicker than we can. And unless you're calling us and asking us, what are you waiting for, how are you going to know? We do try to communicate as best we can, but a phone call always helps best. During the comment periods, like George said, wait till the last day of the comment period, then we'll have a pretty good idea how many comment letters we have and what it's going to take. After the comment period, give us at least 2 weeks, and then you can start calling and saying, okay, where's it at? If we get early comments, we can start early on them, but as George said, most often they come in on the second to the last day or the last day.
And typically, we're going to respond to permit comments directly unless we have a question for the proposer. If it's something that we don't know, we'll ask them to help us respond to that comment. That happens sometimes in the EAW process. You'll ask the proposer to help you respond to comments, address these concerns. What are you going to do? Or not you. What are you going to do? Then we'll help craft that response, and then we respond directly, not the proposer. They don't respond directly.
In a karst area, what triggers a classification of a sensitive area, and is it different above or below 1,000
No, it's if you're within 1,000 feet of any kind of karst feature, like a sinkhole, a spring, cave, that type of thing, it's 1,000 feet, and all that does is to change your mandatory threshold from 1,000 animal units down to 500 animal units.
There's a law that says that the size of the holding capacity of the pit in that karst area has got to be 250,000 gallons per
Yes, I can respond to that one. Yes, there is. Yes. It depends on the number of sinkholes and how close they are. So if there's 4 or more within 1,000 feet, you're limited to 250,000 gallons of liquid storage per cell, but you could have multiple cells.
Okay, so our county ordinance says you can build a livestock facility within 300 feet. Got to be at least 300 feet away from a sinkhole or a karst.
Yep, that's the state rule too, yep.
State rule.
Yep.
So, is it, if you're in that criteria, that we can try and get a permit or not?
If you're within 300 feet of a sinkhole,
So, if you're without 300 feet.
outside of 300 feet,
Outside of 300 feet.
well, yeah, you can get a permit from us for that, yeah. Yep.
Chuck and George, I just wanted to add, I have some questions pertaining to the timing of the permits and how long does it take for environmental review. Our general rule of thumb is that we try to shoot for 4 to 6 months, again, from the time we have a complete EAW to when we issue our finding of facts. And we do, again, just to piggyback on what Peterson, we try to run the environmental review process currently with review, so that they're not sequential and taking double the time. Another thing I just wanted to point out is that the 30-day public comment period that was mentioned, again, that's simultaneously for both environmental review, PAW, and the general permit. They're both on those at the same time, so we do that intentionally, try to compress the time period that it takes. And I wholeheartedly agree that the more often we can interact with consultants, always during that drafting and review period that we're getting those ready for notice, of course, we can get through the process.
I would say the two key factors in determining how long it's going to take to get through the environmental review process is, one is how good is the initial submittal that we get on the EAW, and the second one is how many comments do we get.
More clear than that.
Yep.
If the feedlot has a permitted open air storage, then it's applying for an expansion, we get required to cover the existing, or how is that?
So what's existing is there. You cannot expand that storage. You can't add more open air storage. You can keep using that, but the new stuff has to be covered.
We have to respond to all the comments.
So is that because of the number of comments, does that change depending on where the comments are?
Nope. Nope.
And a lot of times when you get a lot of comments, you tend to get like a form letter. You tend to get the same letter sent by a lot of people. That's easier to respond to. You respond to one letter 200 times, that's easier to respond to.
One thing I missed on this, the EIS decision criteria. One of the items that's not in there is how many people request an EIS. If it's one person that requests an EIS or 1,000 people request the EIS, it doesn't matter.
Thanks everybody for coming, unless you have any other questions. Thank you.